Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of Unpolished Gems. We're super excited to have Will Levis on the show today. I've been lucky enough to know Will for, I don't know, Will, it's got to be 3 years at this point, or 3.5 years since COVID. For those of you that don't know Will, he was a quarterback at Penn State, then transferred to Kentucky, and now is a quarterback on the Tennessee Titans in the NFL. Will, first off, thanks so much for coming on today. We appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I think it was right around this time, about 3 years ago, when we first really started to get to know each other. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I guess we'll start with the context on how we met. 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, COVID rolls around, and I think I got introduced to you from Brad Kraut. It must have been
Yes.
Brad, who we got to have on the show at some point. And we were running this nonprofit called the Making Lemonade Fund, and obviously Will needed to be somewhat of a freak athlete. He's like, why don't I just run to raise money for COVID? But not only did he get on meetings and run some of our meetings with the 60, 70 people we had on every night, but Will did a little bit more of a unique thing to raise money. Will, I'll let you give the honors on explaining what you did because it's so insane. I don't think I could do it justice.
Yeah, I mean, this was just one of the few kind of efforts that we had throughout our campaign, but probably our most prominent and successful. But we did kind of a fun run campaign for people that were capable of and willing to actually run either half marathons or marathons and get people to pledge money per mile that they ran. I, for one, despise long distance running, so I was trying to think of a way to still involve myself, but challenge myself at the same time. For some reason, I've always been pretty good at running backwards, and I thought, what's a good distance of length that I could possibly run backwards for? And I think I went out on the track and I did half a mile, then 1 mile, then a couple miles, and I was like, I think I could do 5 miles backwards. So I got some people to pledge some money, and I said I was going to run 5 miles backwards. I did it, I think, just under an hour, and was able to raise some money. We got some attention from ESPN and stuff from it. But one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think my calves were sore for about a week afterwards, but we'll definitely not do it again. But it was an incredible experience.
I think that's faster than I can go forwards.
That's what I said. I fully think that was faster than I could do it forwards, but that's how I originally met Will. And Will is an awesome dude, and that's why I was talking to my dad, and we were like, this would be such a fun one to do. At that point, you were at Penn State. You were backing up Sean Clifford. Can you kind of give, just for those of people that don't know you, up until the draft, what was the journey like? You were backing up Sean. You were there for 3 years. What was the process up to that point? Give us the 1 to 2 minute. Will Levis from Connecticut ends up at Penn State and decides to transfer to Kentucky.
Yeah, I had a weird recruiting process. I mean, if you guys know anything about high school recruiting at the quarterback position, especially, kids commit very early. So I mean, by the time I really had my name on the radar, there were probably 2/3 of the Power 5 spots already taken by quarterbacks. I got some looks from smaller, like Ivy League schools, some MAC schools, and then the summer going into my senior year, finally got some Power 5 interest. Penn State had an opportunity where their quarterback who was committed, Justin Fields, actually decommitted. So then they had a spot. I always loved Penn State, and when they offered me, I committed right on the spot. Wasn't thinking about, when I was going to start, when my opportunity would come. I just wanted to go to the best school with the best fit for me from an athletic, academic, social life standpoint. And Penn State made all the sense in the world for that reason. Spent a couple years there, redshirted my first year. I was 5th on the depth chart. Trace McSorley was there, obviously a Penn State legend, with a few other guys afterwards. Next year, Sean and I are battling for that starting job. Sean wins the job. He's just 1 year above me. And as everyone knows, only one quarterback plays. And Sean and I were great friends, and we pushed each other and competed. I was able to play in a bunch of games, started a couple games. But going into that third season, kind of in that same spot, second string, I kind of foresaw the possibility of maybe wanting to transfer that next year. So loaded up on credits, did make that decision to transfer after that third year, got my degree in that third year, and then transferred to Kentucky, and was really just kind of betting on myself, went with my gut. I think I was really going back and forth at one point if I was going to stay or not, but just really wanted a new set of eyes on me. And I felt like if I wanted to start for more than 1 year, which was my goal, because I felt like that made the most sense for how I was going to reach my ultimate goal of playing in the league, that was going to be my best bet. So went to Kentucky, played a couple years there, was pretty successful there, and I was able to grant me the opportunity to get to where I am now.
Well, I want to ask a question about, you said your ultimate dream of being, I'm assuming in the NFL, is where your head was at. How early did you know that that was your ultimate goal? Because a lot of people go into sports and have no thought of ever being professional.
I always wanted to be a professional athlete. I think as a kid, my big three were baseball, basketball, football. Those were the three that I rotated through when I was a kid, amongst other sports that I played as well, lacrosse, wrestle a little bit. But those are my main three. And I think as a kid, when I was in those seasons, basketball season, I was like, oh, I want to be in the NBA. Like baseball season, like, oh, I'm going to be in the MLB. Football season came around. Like I loved all those sports so much individually that I had all those dreams. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to go pro in all three leagues. But when I got to college, or when I got to high school, first when I grew a little bit and realized that I kind of had the frame and the ability to make it work at my position to then go and play at the next level. I specialized in football. I focused on football because that was really at that point what my true love was. And that's when I just kind of started attacking that goal.
What was the experience like of you get to state? You'd obviously been the starting guy and had offers from schools. I mean, it would have been great to have you at Cornell. I think we would have actually been somewhat decent at football. But granted, the fact that you went to um, Penn State, what was that first experience like of not playing? Like you sat for 3 years. How do you keep motivation? What's your focus? Where does your mental space go when you're used to playing? And like you said, there's only one quarterback.
Yeah, that first year, I mean, I went in. Trace obviously was the guy, and I knew I was going to be redshirting that year. I vividly remember Coach Franklin sitting us all down at a table, all the freshmen, and he was like, "Who expects to play here this year, and who doesn't?" And I think I was like one of the only guys who said like, "Yeah, I don't really expect to play this year." Like I was looking at it realistically. Obviously, I wanted to. But I did want to kind of have that year of development and to redshirt and to learn from guys like Trace and Tommy Stevens and Sean. And then that next year when I was actually given the opportunity to compete for that starting job, and I felt like it really was a tough competition between me and Sean, and we both had good uh, spring ball and training camps, but he eked out the win for that job, and I always just had the mindset of that I was going to go in there every day trying to earn that job. And I pushed Sean every day and made him better, and ultimately did whatever I could to help the team win. I was able to contribute in multiple ways for the offense still, even though I wasn't starting. But it wasn't a role that really wasn't what my ideal situation was. I was going in there, I was running the ball. I wasn't really being a true quarterback, and I wasn't getting all the reps that I really wanted to at that position to get to the level of playing that I wanted to get to. And that's frustrating. That's really, really tough when especially for me, like I always had a mantra growing up of never give up. That's kind of what I've based everything that I did on. And when I came to that realization that I might want to transfer, I really thought like I was giving up. I was giving up on my team. I was giving up on myself. But I had to kind of flip that mindset and be like, you know what? I'm not giving up. Like I'm not giving up on my dreams. I'm doing what I feel like is going to be best for me to go and reach my goals. So it sucks when you want the plan to work out, to every little detail to line up perfectly, but as we all know, that rarely ever happens, and you're gonna have to roll with the punches, and you're gonna have to make those tough decisions, like in my instance, transferring schools.
How did you go about making a decision as hard as that one?
I had a lot of great support from first and foremost my parents, but then also I got to thank the Penn State coaching staff as well for being very honest and just straightforward with me and kind of where I stood with them and the opportunities that I was going to be getting down the road. But it really just came down to my gut, and I just kind of had to trust that the best way for me to start for more than 1 year, which is what I really thought needed to happen for me to get the best shot to go play at the next level, was to go to a different school, just get a new set of eyes on me and get a new environment. And luckily, Kentucky was able to offer that to me, and it worked out.
How important was playing at that level of SEC football versus some of the other offers you had to you? Because obviously, harder conference, harder people to play against, and a different environment, but obviously, probably more eyeballs for playing on Sunday.
That decision I talked about earlier with my undergrad decision, that it wasn't just football. Football was a huge part of it. In undergrad, it was also the academic piece. I knew I was going to be going into the business school, and Smeal is a great business school at Penn State, and the social life and proximity to home was all pluses. It was a strictly football decision when I was transferring. Sure, I got my master's at Kentucky, but I didn't really look at the academic side. I didn't look at the social life side. I wanted to play against the best. I wanted to be a part of a program that's able to compete against the best. And of all the opportunities that I got, Kentucky definitely was the right opportunity for me.
Well, did you ever consider the downside of like, what if this transfer does not launch my career into the NFL? Like, did you have a plan B, or did you just cut off all the bridges behind you and just go for it?
Yeah, because when I transferred, like it's not like I had the starting job. Like I had to compete to even get the job at Kentucky too. They told me that I'd have a good shot of going in there and competing and winning that job, but I still had to win that job. And uh, I think about it all the time. Like if I didn't win that job, if I would have either stuck around to compete again or even transfer again. I mean, you see guys and girls now in sports transferring 2-3 times, um, and people can drag those people down for doing that and not sticking through and not competing. But I get where they're coming from. Like they're just trying to find that right opportunity, that right environment for them. And a lot of the times it doesn't work out, but a lot of the times it does. And you just need that right environment for yourself, and you got to trust your gut. But I always knew deep down that there was a possibility that it wasn't going to work out. But I always just tried to keep a positive mindset that as long as I handled business the way I knew I could, that it was the right place for me.
Obviously, Kentucky, like you get in there, year one is incredible. You guys far outperform expectations, I think, have one of the best years in history there. And then year two comes around, and I'll let you speak on it, but you had injuries. You guys struggled. You lost a lot of players, and it was a different sense. What was that like to your mentality? How did that change when coming off such a high and then you're injured for a good part of the season?
It was tough. Even though we did have that great season, my junior year there, we had a lot of expectations going into my senior year. Obviously, a lot of expectations on myself personally from the outside. But just even though from a record standpoint and just a team performance standpoint, we didn't necessarily reach our expectations and reach our standard that we wanted to, I felt like I grew as a player, as a person, as a leader, as a teammate so much more in that second year than that first year because of all those adversities that I had to face. You mentioned the injury. Like I had a really nasty toe injury that I sat one game for and then came back and played the rest of the season with, that really never really went away. And it was always there. It affected one of the main parts of my game, which is my athleticism. So I had to kind of be able to play in a way that still was able to go out there and get the job done, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to rely on some of the things I was previously able to rely on. When there's games that we lose that you're not supposed to be losing, that's when people start talking in the locker room. That's when people start losing faith. That really tests you as a leader, as a captain, as a teammate. How are you going to keep all these guys together? How are you going to keep everyone as a cohesive unit when things are not going the right way? And I felt like I wasn't that mature in that sense before that year, but going through that whole experience after those games, and when we were going through the valleys of hardships of that season, I was able to just grow so much in those areas, which was a great experience at the end of the day, really.
That's one of the things I vividly remember back to. I was in Lexington for that game with a bunch of your friends, family, for that game where you didn't play. And one thing that I vividly remember, and I'd love to dive into, is you walk out of the stadium towards the locker room. You guys lost in a game that you guys were definitely favored to win. You didn't play. A bunch of your family and friends were there, and you had a smile, signing autographs, talking to the quarterback who started's family about how good he played. Like, you still kept that face on. What percentage of that was just leading through the grit of what that season was and sort of portraying leadership? And what was the inside of your head like in that moment where you're the face of the program and you're not playing and can't play?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely might have put on that face, but I was definitely pissed off. I can tell you that. Regardless of however a loss is, after a loss, you're never happy about it. But you got to be mature, and you got to kind of be the guy that's going to be able to get in front of the fans, get in front of the media, and be mature about the situation. And even though I didn't play in that game, still being able to take the blame and just pretty much chug forward and let everyone know that regardless of what happened in that last game or in those previous hours, that we're going to be going just as hard as we were the week before in that next week's practice. And for a guy that you either had a good game or a bad game, you have to be able to put your shoulder around them and just make sure that they're keeping the same mentality week in and week out, to just maintain our standards. So I didn't play that game, but I did whatever I could throughout that week to help the guys prepare, and to then that next week get back after that bye week to get us back on track. But those are just the things that are expected of you as a quarterback. And when you're going through tough seasons like that, those are the areas where you're able to really improve in.
Will, did somebody mentor you on leadership? Like, where did you learn the lessons that allowed you to rise from like player to coach, cheerleader, leader?
I'd say in high school, like my high school head coach, like when I was a sophomore, I was pretty immature. Like in my like 7th, 8th grade years, like I was the dude who, if things weren't going well, I was getting pissed off. I was blaming others. I was pointing fingers, and just not a leader and someone that is going to take command of a locker room and really earn the respect of others. And I mean, I was a kid, and when I got to high school and when the demands of the quarterback really took it up a notch, I remember my coach really making it clear to me what's expected of a quarterback. And by signing up to be a quarterback, you are held to a higher standard, and these are the ways you have to handle yourself on and off the field. And so that's when I was like, okay, like I'm starting to get it. I'm mature enough to understand this, and now I just need to put it into practice and figure out how my brain works, what kind of leader I am, how I can improve as a leader, and then really just look into other guys, my role models that I watched growing up. I'm Tom Brady. I was a big Patriots fan, so watching and reading about him and the ways that he would just take command in the locker room and really spread love and positivity among his teammates. Those were the reasons why they were able to be so successful. Like, sure, they had great athletes, they had great players, but the way they were able to play together, the way that that program runs itself, and thus how the leaders lead that locker room, that's what really made them special. And you have to make it your own, but when you have people like that to look up to, it really helps.
One of the parts of you finish up at Kentucky, obviously throughout the entire year, people are talking NFL draft, NFL draft, NFL draft, and you're prepping for the combine and all of that. I think a lot of people don't appreciate the amount of off the field components there are to the draft, picking an agent, financial manager, all of that stuff. Can you give a quick rundown on what that timeline looks like from the season ending? Because I remember I saw you right in the middle of that agent selection process, and it seemed chaotic. What does that process look like? Like, season's over, what happens between them and the combine?
Yeah, I mean, it really starts before that senior season. Like, I remember that summer before is when I had a bunch of agents, bunch of financial advisor, marketing people reaching out to me, and I did want to get ahead of it because I had a plan that I set out for myself. Like, I wanted to be able to build relationships with those people before the season so that I didn't have to talk to any of them throughout it, and get it down to those handful of people that I knew I was taking seriously, so that in that couple week period when the season ends to when you start your pre-draft training, I was able to make those final decisions, have those final meetings, and get those people in place, so that once I did get the ball rolling with the draft prep process, that I had those people, and that wasn't another thing I had to worry about on top of all the things I had to do for training and just getting ready for the combine and interviews and all that. So I had a really good process with that. I felt like I didn't leave any stones unturned. I did it all myself. I took great pride in that. A lot of guys I know, my parents helped me a little bit, but I took great pride in the ability to do the whole vetting process myself and do my due diligence with the amount of meetings I had with these people. But it's crazy. Like, I remember at one point I had probably 15 to 20 people probably hit me up, trying to get on Zooms, get on meetings. And I gave most of them opportunities, but it's crazy. You can't have that on your plate when you're trying to have a senior campaign, So I thought the way I did it was pretty smart.
And what were the core values you were looking for? Like, what was the important things to you?
Yeah, I think track record was one. I wanted to be able to be with a company and with a person that had previous success with people in my position. I wasn't looking to be someone's pet or experiment, and But at the end of the day, it was really just a relationship. That's what any business is really all about. It's the connection that you have on a human level with someone else. And I just had certain feelings with certain people that drew my energy to them, and vice versa. That you have to understand, these people, you're talking to them on a daily basis. If you don't like talking to them, and these aren't they're not necessarily friends of yours, but if you're not able to communicate maturely and candidly with these other people, like you're going to go crazy, you know. So getting a core group of people that you trust, people that also, and companies that also are going to be able to offer connections and relationships that will help you outside of football, which definitely on the agent side was something I was looking at with the specific agency that I chose. And but at the end of the day, it was really just the people and getting to know them. And you know, they're all smart. They can all get the job done. No one's going to guarantee you that they're going to make you more money than anybody else, you know. So
You didn't get any of the guys off the street that promised you like a 200% return of everybody else?
yeah, like someone who's not going to take a cut of your contract until your second contract. Like, no, like I'm gonna pay you because you're going to do a good job for me.
Yeah, you want them to be mutually aligned, right?
Exactly.
How different was it from the NIL experience in terms of marketing agents? I think you went with just all in one, but Dad, for the record, Will had a NIL deal with a horse, legitimately, which I'll let him explain. But what was the difference between sort of that vetting process?
It wasn't too extensive because I really started my NIL stuff going into my junior year. I didn't do much going into my junior year because I wasn't as big a name as I was going into my senior year because I really hadn't played yet. But there was a certain company that worked with a lot of guys in the team already, and just by word of mouth suggestions by some of the teammates that I trusted, and the deals that they were able to get done with that company, that was enough for me to go with them and to really get the handful at most deals that I got going into that senior year. And I mean, I could sit here and talk about NIL all day. I have very strong opinions about all of it, and I think what was a little different about mine, and I've been pretty candid about this recently, like my experience than others, all of it, which helped me actually going into the pros and how marketing's handled here. But all the deals, all the money that I made in college, which was certainly enough, but not nearly as much as even some of these high school kids are making before they even play a snap.
You didn't get a $10 million signing bonus to just smile and
No.
sign a contract?
Yeah,
it's insane.
take off a couple zeros, and
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. But I earned all the money that I made. Like I didn't have any pay to play money. Like I learned about the ins and outs of marketing deals and what a proper value is for me and my brand and what I'm offering for these companies and vice versa. And I did the handful of deals that I thought was appropriate, the ones that I thought worked with me and my brand. One of them being with a horse breeding farm, which was very unique and gained a lot of attention, which was awesome. And just really quickly, really briefly, we were looking at mostly local companies to do these deals with, because those are the ones that are emotionally attached to the University of Kentucky and are more willing to, you know, just engage in those deals than national companies. It's because I wasn't even a national name at that point. But we couldn't do anything related to drugs, XXX, or, you know, gambling of any sort. So gambling specifically, we couldn't do anything with horse trainers or jockeys or anything like that because, you know, the gambling implications of horse racing. But we were able to take it a step further as kind of a loophole. We were like, what about like a horse breeding farm? Like, would that work? And we got approval for that. So we started looking around at some local farms, Claiborne Farms being one of the most well-known farms, not only in Kentucky, but in the country. And they also had a horse, coincidentally, named War of Will in their at their farm. So we thought that was very fitting, and we were able to make that partnership work. And it was a really cool experience. And those are the types of unique partnerships that make the most waves and are able to really get the attention, the extra attention and media coverage for those companies because of that uniqueness. And that was a lot of fun.
Who shopped those deals for you, Will? Is that someone doing it on your behalf? Are you doing it for yourself?
That was someone doing it on my behalf. I had a couple that I'd sourced myself, but um, it was mostly that company that I'd mentioned earlier that was working with a few athletes on the University of Kentucky team, and had done a good job with them. They worked with Wandale Robinson, who was obviously our star receiver my junior year, and because of the success they had with him, I was confident that they were going to be able to do good things for me too. So that was their doing, and um, once they brought it to me, that's when we started looking for specific farms. And they found Claiborne and brought it to me, and then specifically War of Will, it made complete sense, and it was on them to obviously agree to do the deal. But I thought it was very creative, and they did a great job with that.
Since you gave me the layup and broached the topic of NIL, what's your thoughts on the evolution? Like, you were in there prior, you were in there as it turned up as a local name, then as a national name, and now you're seeing the impact of literally high schoolers signing, which they say on paper are multi-million dollar deals. Who knows the validity of that? What's your thoughts?
There's no way around it. I mean, I think that guys and girls deserve to be paid 100%. Um, there's no way to make it fair. There's no way to get equal representation across all sports. But the whole pay to play thing is just what doesn't really sit right with me. Seeing someone transferring schools and making that decision on a dollar amount opposed to what the opportunities are, and what makes most sense for them as a player and as a fit. It muddies the waters, and it makes me sick. Like, honestly, like it's weird to think about, but there's no doubt in my mind that student athletes deserve to have money in their pockets. And the way that I feel like I did it was what NIL in its purest form was supposed to be. And if that's how it is across the board, then that's awesome, and that's what makes sense. But if there aren't ways around this pay to play thing, then there's nothing we can do about it. But the rich are only going to get richer. The strongest of the teams in the league are only going to get stronger because of these new rules. And it's going to be interesting to see how the landscape of college football changes from here on out. And we've already seen it with all the conference realignments and all that. So I'm glad I'm out of it. I'm glad I don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's another reason why I would never coach college football.
Seems awful. It seems like the biggest, like, you're literally playing, like, you're both, it's like you're a politician. You're recruiting money to then have to be paying out. It's free agency every year. And just because a guy commits doesn't mean he'll be there next year. That's the craziest part. People are just coming in and poaching guys who have been at a program for 3 years for a 1 year rental almost in a pay to play thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Schools are going to be just seen as stepping stones to get to other schools. Guys and girls are going to be making decisions for not the right reasons. And recruiting never sat right with me in person. For one, I thought my experience, I personally saw some nasty sides of it even before NIL, and I feel like it's just got even dirtier since then. And I can't sit down a 15, 16-year-old and tell him to come to the school because he's the greatest thing in the world. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give you $1 million. Oh, someone else give you $1.5 million? Like, I guess we can do that too. Like, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Is there any putting the genie back in the bottle at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the toothpaste is out of the tube, but obviously legislations can change, and they can try to calm it down a little bit. But right now, it's kind of all hell is broken loose, I feel like.
Will Levis has a magic wand, and you're the commissioner of college football. What would you do? Like, what do you think is the reasonable way to handle it?
I mean, I would just like to take away, just there has to be payment for adequate services. Like, you can't just be handing out money and paying someone to come there and play. But I feel like as long as there's the rule that you can play these players, like, there's no way around it. So I mean, I feel like if there was a solution, then someone would have already thought of it. But for me, that's just the one way I feel like that it could be done the right way, is if players were just paid based on, their services and what makes sense for what they're doing for companies or what have you.
Do you think that it creates almost like a situation like we have with military, which is, people enlisting versus like mercenaries, and the mentality difference that exists between those two pools of people? One will fight to the, till there's nothing left, or they give their life, and the other one's doing it for the money. Is that what we're creating here? That kind of dichotomy?
It's very interesting. I never thought about that comparison, but it's like once you're why everyone works, not the only reason, but like why everyone plays college football is because they want to get to that next level, right? And the only way to be able to transfer over from this amateur side of the sport to where you're making, what is it, a couple, like $1,500, a couple $1,000 a month stipend on being able to live in college, like, to then being able to actually being paid to play the sport, like that is the incentive to go out there and to grind your ass off and to dominate at that level, to get to that level. If kids are being paid seven figures, like going into, before even taking a snap in college, like, do you think they're going to be working as hard? Like they've already made life-changing money for them and their family. Like, unless they get drafted in the first round of the NFL, they're not going to be making any more than they did in their 4 years in college, on that first contract that they signed. So it's crazy. I mean, hopefully the love of the game is never lost, and kids are going to go out there and work hard regardless of how much money they're making. But you got to think that take some motivation out of it.
And how important do you think that was for you on like you're hustling to try and make it to the next level? It's not like, oh, I'm hustling to try and make that next paycheck from a new NIL deal. Like, have you noticed guys starting to have the motivation on, I'm trying to chase my next transfer portal or my next NIL deal rather than the angle of I want to get to the league?
I haven't felt that. I mean, I wasn't in the era of NIL, I feel like, long enough to be able to feel that. But I would love to be a fly on the wall of like a MAC school, of a kid, a 2-star recruit who 2 or 3-star recruit who only had that offer to go play at Akron or Ball State. Like, you got to think, like, they're telling their boys, like, dude, like I can't wait to have this year so I can play at Bama next year. How does that affect a locker room? Like, how does that, like, dudes aren't there to work for the legacy of their team and their school that they signed to. Like, they're just trying to take that next step and get that next paycheck, and then obviously go and play at the next level. But it's just crazy to think about.
You're right. It's literally become stepping stone. It's like those MAC guys probably want to go play Power Five so that they can go get that next NIL offer, pay to play thing, then move on. It's very. I don't know if you saw the NCAA like the college football game is, I guess, supposed to come back, but then there was a little bit of news that there was a holdup because the same. Like I'll let you go on it from your reaction.
No, I was just like, I literally missed it by a year. Like, it was my favorite game growing up as a kid. I was like, I can't wait to be a part of this game. And then whatever, in 2014, they ended it. And then I was like, oh, I guess I won't be a part of it. And then obviously NIL passes and they're bringing it back. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be back in the inaugural game, like, of this last year. I'm going to be, this 95 overall player in this game, whatever. It's going to be sick playing with myself. And then they postpone it. And now I'll never be in an NCAA game. And they just ripped my heart out with that. It was terrible.
I don't know if you saw that there's a group suing them because they don't like the fact that I think it was like every player gets $500, and some guys felt they were worth more. But then the weird dichotomy of it again is some guys maybe sure should deserve $5,000, but then does the third string guy on Akron, for example, like he probably would love that $500?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the only way to do it is to have the deal where everyone gets paid the same amount. There's a lot of deals in the NFL that guys do where there's a specific name for it that's not coming to mind right now, that a lot of guys do. Like, it's Madden. Like, everyone gets paid the same amount for Madden regardless if you're first string or whatever.
It's part of the NFLPA. You're just in it.
Yeah, there's no way to divvy out and get guys paid.
You get an extra 1,000 for every overall you are. If you're 91, you get $1,000 more than 90. Like, I don't know how else you do it.
There's no way to do it. And I just think if they want to make the game, they got to just accept that everyone's going to get paid the same.
Well, how important is it to avoid injury? Like, as you raise up in this game, and The second corollary to that is like, what's the hack that you guys follow to have long careers?
Will's got some crazy knee routine, I think. I vaguely remember you telling me about.
I definitely, as I've gotten older and as I've gotten to the later as I've gone through my career, you hear more and more, especially when you get to the NFL, about how availability is the best ability and how the only way to make money in this league for a long time is to stay healthy. Uh, what sucks about this game is that injuries truly are inevitable and they're going to happen, and there's no way to play the game. You can't play the game with the thought in your mind of trying not to get injured, because then if you play that way, if you played scared that way, you're only going to get more injured. So you really just got to go balls to the wall, regardless of how you're feeling, or else you're going to be in danger of getting injured more. But there's definitely ways to prevent injury and to do body maintenance and to get in there with the trainers, regardless if you're currently injured or not, to prevent and to do things that prepare your joints and just your certain muscles to go out there and perform and recover in a more efficient manner. And some dudes invest in that, some dudes don't. I mean, even before I got truly injured in my senior year, I was spending upwards of 2 hours in the training room every day, just either prepping my arm or getting my knees activated and making sure my hips were aligned and doing all these little things that are very tedious and not fun necessarily, but are necessary if you're going to want to be able to get through a whole season in the NFL, which is now crazy at the minimum 18 weeks long. It's a long and taxing season, and it's a lot in your body. But I mean, we signed up for this, and that's part of our job, is to be able to take care of our bodies.
Like, how do you think of Tom Brady? How is a Tom Brady doing this? How is a LeBron doing this? Like, you're talking about at the world class level against the best athletes on the planet, and they're lasting for however many years at the top of the game. How do they do it?
Hey, they invest in themselves. You know the phrase, you got to spend money to make money. Like LeBron spends $1 million every single year on his body, and that's a fact. Like he's come out and said that. I'm sure Brady's right up there in the same range. And for me, like I've already in my pro career, I've already found a few things that I've had to invest in myself. I spend $400 on massages every week. Like, I mean, it's a lot of freaking money, but I mean, that I've found that's one of the only things that truly makes me feel so much better, to a point where I'm able to go and perform at my highest level. So like, even though that's like $20,000 a year I have to spend on massages, like that's necessary to get through the season.
That was some impressive math right from the top of your head. NFL draft process, that entire thing, there was so much hype. Like, you had to live through the hype process of going to the league, going through the combine. There's stuff getting posted about you every day leading up to the anticipation. You go out with your family to the draft, and ESPN shows you for many, many hours that night. Can you bring us inside the draft room?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talk about this, because
I know this probably isn't a fun one, but I'm curious your thoughts.
No, this is fine. This is fine. I mean, I went through the whole pre-draft process, talking to a number of people, getting a lot of information, gathering a lot of information as to where I could potentially land. And based on all the people I talked to, not just my agent who'd be blowing smoke at my ass and is going to tell me that I'm going here, even though he would never do that. Like, I'm talking to actual teams, like teams picking like later in the first round, who are pretty much saying like, yeah, it's great talking to you, but you're not going to be there when we pick. So like, yada, yada. And like hearing that's like, pretty cool. Like these people, these coaches, these personnel people at these other NFL teams believe that I won't even be there when they pick. Like that's pretty reassuring information. And leading up the week of the draft, we had a final meeting with me and my agents, and we had a couple teams that we thought had a really good chance at taking me in that first round. And because of that, we were like, hey, we're going to the draft. We're gonna be there in the green room, because we truly feel like that there's a really good chance, based on all the information that we gathered, that I would be picked in the first round, and more than likely in the first half of the first round. So we thought it was a no-brainer. My family and I were very, very excited. It's very rare that my mom and my grandmas get to get a nice dress and to go out and experience something like that. So we're very excited. We get there to Kansas City, and we knew if we got to a certain point in that draft, if I got past that, 15 mark, that, it could be a long night. And we got to that point, and it sucked, but I sat through it, and picks kept coming through, the camera kept coming on me, and I was very, very proud of how my family handled it. We handled it very, very maturely, and I was just kind of matter of fact about it. I was just like, hey, it is what it is. I know regardless of where I get picked, I'm going to make it happen. And we got to the end of that first round after the camera, I think, was showing on me 27 times or whatever it was. And no one knows this actually, but I got a call in between picks 31 and 32, or 30 and 31 at the end of the first round. I got a call. I jolt up. I think Tennessee's traded up for me in the first round, because I've talked to them, and they had been trying, but they didn't get a deal to happen. But I get a call, and it was some asshole who just prank called me. And I don't know if it was a prank call or something, but it was a number. I tried to track down to find out who the number is, because in that moment I was so pissed off. But they didn't say anything. I picked up, and there was nothing on the other line, and then it hung up. My whole family's all excited and everything. The camera's looking at me and ready to record me getting the call, and they just hung up. And I was like, let's get out of here. And we just left. And we had a family party the next day, so we couldn't stay for that second day of the draft. But we got home. We had a terrible flight experience also the next day. So we were delayed, and then we were in traffic, and we didn't get back until right as the second round started. And then literally coming through the door, as I started stuffing my face with food because I hadn't eaten all day, I got that call from the Titans. And all that pain and suffering that we went through that previous day, none of it mattered in that moment. And to get that call, I didn't care if I was going to be a first-round pick or undrafted. Just to realize my dream finally of being selected was awesome.
And I really do think from that experience, I think you gained a lot of fans from that night. On like you said, you guys handled that situation with so much class. Because I know I remember, I know you talked about it publicly. I remember you told me, you were like, if I'm going, I'm anticipating getting drafted in the first round. I don't want to be the guy that sits. And then to see it, I'm like, I vividly, I saw you a week before, and I was like, are you going? He's like, and you were like, only if I know I'm going to probably be a first round pick. Otherwise, I don't want to be the Aaron Rodgers situation. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my God. And you guys are keeping smile looking good. Like, I had the secondhand pain. So I think you guys did an unbelievable job. When you got the phone call from the Titans, none of that mattered. And then how quick were you back to I need to go prove all these teams wrong? Was it a vengeance feeling? Was it an excitement feeling? What came from that?
I think I started drinking right away, so it wasn't until probably a couple days later when I recovered from my hangover. So that first things first, we were going to celebrate because that was an awesome moment.
I saw some unbelievable Snapchats from some of your homeboys. Saw a couple kegs. I saw some fun. I saw some good times that night.
I didn't need that extra motivation. If I got picked first overall, I was going to have that same mentality and the same work ethic. Just because I got picked when I did, it's not like all of a sudden I got to work harder now. I feel like if you let circumstances dictate how hard you work, then you got the wrong mindset. So it's definitely something that I can think about and look back to make the story kind of cooler if my career goes the way I hope it goes. But I was gonna work hard regardless of where I got picked.
What are the goals, or do you have goals laid out for the next year?
This first year, what my goal is, I want to get the confidence from my coaches, all the members of the organization and my teammates that I can be this franchise's starting quarterback, to be this franchise's guy. And right now I'm not in a position to be the starter. I'm working for an opportunity. But even if I don't start a game this year, I want people to know that how I worked, how I played in practice, and just how I just competed every single day, that people were confident that if my name gets called, when my name gets called, that they can count on me to get the job done.
Do you look at this like you looked at year one at Penn State, where they said who doesn't think they're going to be playing, and you'd raise your hand, but you're going to do everything else you can support the team? How do you look at it?
No, it's a little different. I think especially like I know at least I'm going to get preseason reps, so that alone is going to be huge for me. But the football's weird. You never know when a guy's going to go down and when your name's going to get called. It's a little different when, like, in my first year at Penn State, when I was fifth string, when I really thought that wasn't going to be a possibility. But being in the position I am now, competing right now to get those reps for if my name does get called, I do feel like at some point this year, like my name could very easily get called on, and I got to be ready for that opportunity.
How do you maintain the humility of being world class and constantly starting at the bottom of a heap each time you go up a level?
I feel like that's how the world usually is, though. Like it's very rare. Obviously, if you're a first round pick quarterback, you're expected most of the time to come in and start right away. You got to earn your opportunities. You got to get through the mud and go through the dark times before you can experience the light. And it's part of most NFL players' journey is going from practice squad and third or fourth string to then working up the depth chart to get opportunities. Uh, so I mean, a bunch of guys have gone through this same process that I have and gone on to have Hall of Fame careers. So to see that, it just gives you reassurance.
Anything that was the most surprising after joining the NFL that you didn't expect?
I think, like, in terms of the workload and what was expected of me and just what would go into a day-to-day life of an NFL player was pretty much what I expected. I think I was going into the NFL thinking like, oh, these guys are all grown adults. They're all there to get theirs, get in there, and get out of there. Um, it's much more similar to a college locker room feel than I had anticipated. Like, sure, there's a lot of these dudes in their 30s with a wife and kids, but they're still kids at heart playing a kids game, and we're all just in there having fun and busting each other's chops and playing a game, playing a game. We play a kids game for our job, and we have a lot of fun doing it. And regardless of if you're competing with someone or not, like, everyone's always is very supportive, and I think that's at least part of our culture at the Titans that might be a little unique, and it's something that Vrabel always harps on is the relationships that we build with each other and how that's much more important than the X's and the O's. That I wasn't anticipating as much as I experienced.
Nashville's going to be such a great city to be in. I'm so jealous. Like, out of all the places to end up, that's an unbelievable landing spot.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, you have no say in where you go in the NFL. Obviously, like, they draft you, and you're like, all right, I guess I'm going here. And going through the process, like, I didn't want to have any preferences as to, like, where I wanted to go because I knew I had no say. But in the back of my mind, I wanted to be in Nashville. Like, who doesn't want to live in Nashville?
It's an unbelievable place. I was there before we taped. Like I said, I was there a month ago, and I was like, I could live here. I could 100%. Like, you're in farmland with horses, and then in 20 minutes, you're on Broadway. And it's the craziest dynamic I've ever seen. How do you garner respect, especially at the quarterback position where you're looked at as a leader? If you come into a room of men who are 30, like you said, 30s with families, and you're a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid coming in, what's the process on getting their respect and being looked at as a leader in the locker room?
Yeah, I think it starts. You just kind of shut up and you listen, and you do your due diligence with first and foremost learning the playbook and knowing what you're doing out there. The only way to earn respect is to be reliable and to gain the knowledge of your teammates that they know that at the very least you know what you're doing. And it doesn't matter how great of an athlete you are or how talented you are. If you don't know what you're doing, like, no one's going to trust you out there. So getting down the playbook and learning your stuff in that respect is the most important. And then it's showing up every day. It's showing up and doing your job every day and making plays on the field. And then once you start doing that and you start stringing some days together of doing that, that's when people first start being like, all right, this kid can play ball. Like, I can get behind this kid. This guy can be, part of our team. And even though they might not say it to you, you can feel that with guys when they start trusting you. And as a quarterback, when you can feel the command and presence that you have in a huddle and the confidence that other guys have in you of stepping in there and being able to get the job done, I felt like I was able to get to that point towards the end of like the OTA period. Definitely haven't peaked, but just being able to feel myself gain a little bit of confidence from my teammates and trust from them was a really cool experience.
Well, how do you maintain balance when you are going into the NFL? I mean, like what you would talk about in like, the civilian life of like a work-life balance. How do you have a work-life balance in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to have hobbies and to not take what you do too seriously. Like you got to put in the work, you got to put in the hours, you got to punch your card and punch out at the right times. But you got to be able to decompress. You can't be on all the time. Like you can't be constantly uh, focused on what could go wrong or what needs to be done at practice the next day. If you put in the work like you need to, you should be able to have time to yourself every day to do things like I just like to chill. And when I get home from practice, I don't want to move. I just want to sit on the couch and watch TV and play video games and go hit golf balls or go fishing. Like, it's important to not take what you do too seriously and to have other things in your life that are able to distract you from what could be a very stressful job of playing in the NFL.
Before we wrap, something we ask all our guests and dive into for a bit that I'd love to is in 15 years, where does Will Levis see himself?
On my fourth contract with the Tennessee Titans, I think like that's the goal. I mean, you rarely see guys sticking with the same franchise their whole careers, and you rarely see guys reach career lengths of that length. But I mean, that's what I'm shooting for. I want to be a multi-world championship winner. I want to go down as the greatest quarterback that this franchise has ever had. And in 15 years, I hope first and foremost as a person that probably have a few kids and that I'm a great father first and foremost, but that I'm also a damn good quarterback at that point that is reaching the end of their career, but not quite done yet.
Awesome.
I think that's a very fair one. Dad, anything you wanted to add on that topic? I know you usually get either like Buddhist or something super
I'm
deep
not going to
when
go
we start
Buddhist
talking
on
about
well.
this stuff.
No,
So
but the only thing I was curious about is like I don't know what the signing contract is or anything like that, but how do you think about money management, wealth management, based on the fact that like I think it's amazing that you have a long-term goal of more than 15 years, but should anything ever shorten a career, how do you approach that aspect of your planning?
It was funny when I first started talking to financial advisors, like and who I ended up signing with. I signed with them because I think he arbitrarily picked like I was getting picked like 12th in the first round or something, and he and all the numbers and money that you make is all slotted for the most part, and you know how much you're going to make, and he showed me how just by getting picked at that spot and the money you make just from that contract, how we could make that last my entire life. And he went through how we could budget it, how that budgeting would look like, and how even if I don't even touch a second contract, that'd be able to give me a decent retirement income. And that might not necessarily be the case with where I got picked in the second round, but it's just very important to think long term and to know that that second contract is not guaranteed, and that you need to be able to understand that this could be the only money you make in this league, and that you need to act accordingly. So always working the long game, being disciplined, sticking to a plan that makes sense for you and the expenses that you have to make. And luckily, I have a financial advisor who's very smart that's able to keep me on top of those types of things.
So no major entourages. You're not buying 5 mansions and 12 different cars.
I got one bedroom. I got a 1 bedroom apartment. That's it. I did a car deal, so I have a free lease to drive a car around. I don't even own a car yet, so I feel like that's the way to do it. I'm not a car guy. If I can go my whole career without paying for a car, like, are you kidding me?
any other final things before we wrap on what was it like waking up? If you saw, like, you just came off of the draft where obviously the first day didn't go as you planned, and then you're so happy from the second day getting the call, going to Tennessee. Did you see the memes on Instagram? And like, what was the reaction to that?
That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep at all after that first round. It was a very emotional night, and it was. I thought I was in a nightmare. Like it was crazy. I had a hard time like looking away from that stuff. Like usually I do a good job of not paying attention to those things, but I got caught in a dark moment where I was kind of paying attention to those things, and I was taking to heart some of the things people were saying. And I think it was my girlfriend who was able to just snap me out of it and be like what the hell are you doing? Like I realized that none of that stuff mattered, and uh, I didn't sleep the following night either, but for a completely different reason because we were up all night celebrating. But yeah, that's important to not pay attention to the idiots on the internet. And that was a weak moment of myself where I did kind of look to those things, and not that I was taking them to heart, but I was kind of looking at them and trying to use them as a source of motivation when, who cares about that stuff? And I just got to do me, and the internet will always internet.
Any last minute advice to a kid who's out there just playing football, in junior high school, but he has an aspiration to be an NFL player one day?
I ran a camp actually with another NFL quarterback that went to my high school the other day at our high school, or yesterday at our high school. And the message that we had for these kids, other than playing ball, was kind of what I talked about earlier, was really on the relationship side. Like, understand how special of a game football is. Sports in general are just an incredible way to create friendships and bonds that'll last a lifetime, and go through experiences that are going to teach you lessons that you really can't experience in other environments. And don't overlook the relationship aspect of it. Always bring love and positivity into everything that you do. Get to know your teammates. Understand what makes them tick, and thus what can make your team tick, and get your team to the next level. And if you're a good teammate, a lot of the times that's more important than being a successful individual player, and that's going to take you further in not just football, but in life and everything that you're going to do outside of football. So, sure, grind your ass off, work hard, be the best you can on the physical side, but focus just as much on the personal side.
Awesome advice.
Well, anything else that we didn't hit on that you wanted to add? I know we got pretty in depth there.
I can't think of anything. No, I talked about some things that I really haven't talked to specifically about the draft, which I've been excited to kind of get off my chest and talk about. But I really appreciate you guys having me, and this was a great opportunity to talk about some of the things that I felt throughout this whole crazy process of my career that I've had.
Quite a bit has changed. It's just crazy to see the amount in 3 years what can happen. Like, isn't it just fun seeing from everybody from Making Lemonade that we met and stayed in touch with, like, people's lives. Just 3 years is a long time, and I think it's that whole thing of like, you underestimate what you could do in a year, or you overestimate what you could do in a year, but underestimate what you could do in three. And I think you're a perfect example of it, and it's been a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope we can do another one of these maybe after season one and get a recap on year one.
Heck yeah! Thanks for having me.